Hello, everyone. You're listening to Those Are the Girls with Mallory and Friends. I'm Mallory, and we are changing culture and bringing back traditional values. So today's episode, I am doing with Olivia. It's kind of a solo, but with a guest. And it's an episode I've really wanted to talk about for a while because I want to say it was my sophomore year in college. I read an article about how one of the least donated items were pads and tampons to women's shelters and how hard it was for women to get pads and tampons. And I just, for whatever reason, that really stuck with me. And I read this article and I remember thinking, okay, something like, because it's something that most of us don't really think twice about. Like whenever your period comes, like, okay, here it is. Let me get the proper things that I need. It's not something that is an insecurity for most of us, but for a lot of people, and not just women in shelters, there's women, everyday women that you might even interact with on a daily basis, that it is kind of a hard thing because also too, pads and tampons are starting to get expensive. And as you guys know, last year we raised money to get some for the women's shelter. There's a women's shelter in Charlotte, and we're doing it again this year. Last year the goal was $200. I want to say we raised $213, and then this year I put the goal up to $250. So let's try to surpass that goal again this year. But just to talk about like what exactly it is and give us some insight on it, I have brought on my friend Olivia, who we've interviewed her before with her organization, Women of Mountain City. So she's actually going to talk about period poverty in general, and we're just going to discuss it a little bit and pretty much try to convince you guys why we all should care and what we can all do to help. So without further ado, Olivia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi. Yes, I am from Mountain City, Tennessee. I'm right at the corner there near Boone and Damascus, Virginia. So I'm in that little tiny corner in the top of Tennessee. And I started a period poverty nonprofit. Now it is an empowerment center, but we seriously still focus on period poverty because of the real barriers that women face getting these products. So a little bit about me. I am from rural Appalachia, where we do not have women's nonprofits. We don't have a shelter, no soup kitchen, no advocacy. So we're in a very rural area, no Walmart. So getting these products are a little more difficult for women in these kinds of areas than maybe somebody that's living in a more metropolitan area. So I decided to start this nonprofit with the hopes of supplying schools and women that were facing home insecurity or poverty at an extreme level, these products to just get them back on their feet, help them, and to erase some of the stigma that's been put around this subject in general.
Yes, thank you so much for that introduction. Also, thank you for what you're doing. A couple of things I wanted to talk about in what you just said. So I guess, can we discuss, because I'm pretty sure a good chunk of our listeners live in an area. So for example, in Charlotte, if I need pads really quick, I can even run up to the gas station and grab some. Like we are in an area, like there's some pretty much everywhere. Not only is it everywhere though, it is kind of expensive in the sense of like, I want to say, because I wear pads exclusively because I don't do the whole tampon thing. I want to say it's like $5 just for maybe like enough for a couple days.
Right.
But if you're living in if you're on a tight budget, $5 can kind of be a lot. So can you possibly discuss maybe like some of the reasons people could be
yeah, absolutely
insecure?
Yeah. So let's start in the younger days, right? Like let's start when we are 10, 11, 12, 13, and we're starting our period around that time. In areas where, like I said before, there's not a Walmart, there's not all these places that are immediate to them, like in metropolitan areas. You've got young women, right, who are they might be learning about periods in school, and they might not. So when this is happening to them, are they having a conversation with their parents about what a period is? And we know that addiction and poverty and all kinds of other circumstantial things can influence the way that a young woman grows up, and if these conversations are happening. So I always like to start like when we're at that young tender age of like, oh my God, what is happening to me? I am bleeding from my vagina. This is weird. And it's like, do they know that they have options? Most of the time, yes, their parents or their grandparents, whoever's raising them, does have this conversation. But we really need to look into what happens when mom or dad or grandpa or grandma or guardian cannot afford those things, along with the other bills that they're having to pay. Okay, so I always like to think about that and start off with that. And what we've found in our area is that girls feel very, very uncomfortable asking anybody for these products. They don't feel comfortable asking a teacher, a nurse. So
why do you think that is?
Stigma, right? And that's one thing we'll get to is like cultural barriers. So, not only do maybe they're not getting it at home, they feel uncomfortable asking these questions because not enough people are making it a normal thing, right? So I was fortunate enough to where my dad he never made me feel weird about having a period. And how it is growing up as a girl, and your dad, like maybe you accidentally left a bloody tampon in the trash can and like your dad went in there to get something and you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But luckily I had a really good childhood in that my parents never made that to be such a normal thing. Like I was the kind of girl that walked to the pool with a tampon in my hand and didn't care. But for the most part, that's not a normal thing, especially in rural areas where culture plays a big role. So you've got that financial barrier where maybe mom and dad can't afford it. Maybe, they just can't afford that added expense. But then you've also got that cultural barrier of like, it's not being discussed. For example, in the county where I do my nonprofit, they're not allowed to show girls how to even put in a tampon.
Really?
It's very, yes, in fear that it would promote promiscuity.
Wow.
Right. So girl, I'm telling you, the mountains are like, they're their own region of this country. Wow. But you've got that cultural barrier, right? Where it's like, there's this weird association between something going in your vagina almost being sexual. And sometimes I'll hear people say, well, if you give out free tampons and pads, you got to give out free condoms. Okay, one's contraception for sex.
What? Wow.
It really just boils down like, are we normalizing a product for young women? Are we normalizing that this is a hygiene product?
Yeah, I think, just sorry to cut you off really quick. The cultural aspect is that's so real. Cause I remember one time I was at an event or something and I needed to change my pad. So I took it out of my purse and I remember, cause I was just going to put it in my pocket real quick cause I didn't want to carry my purse to the bathroom and go to the bathroom. My mom saw me and she was like, oh my God, I cannot believe you took that out. Put that up. And she was like making this big hoopla over it. And I remember if I wanted to get out of stuff in high school, I would just say, I'm having a woman thing. And my teacher would be like, okay. Wouldn't even, ask me more questions. And there was a time or two where I wasn't having a woman thing. I just knew that he's so uncomfortable that I could just say that and he's not going to ask any more questions. So I definitely normalizing these products and normalizing having a period in general, I think is a good step. I mean, we've said it on the podcast. I don't remember if we even said it when you were here, but we've said the thing before where it's like, a lot of times we whispered like, whenever I'm on my period, as opposed to, I'm on my period. And if we just say it normally and like, just talk about it as if it's like not this evil boogeyman, this terrible curse that we have, I think it'll definitely help, especially younger women.
Exactly. It's those little micro examples of like normalizing it. Like, for
Yeah.
example, I was at the gym and a guy was like, "Aren't you going to work out with us?" And I was like, "Nah, dude, I just started my period." And he just was like, "Okay." I'm like, "Yeah, dude, like the first day is always the hardest for me. I feel like, I feel like dirt today. Like, not really wanting to do any activity, jumping rope or anything,
Yeah.
So I'm going to skip out today." And just saying that out loud is like normalizing it. Just being like,
Yeah.
"You know what? I'm actually on my period, not really feeling that great." Um, but yeah, like getting past those things. And I think we need to acknowledge the reason why it's weird is because it has to do with a vagina, right? Like it
Yeah.
has to do with the female sex organ, right? And
Hmm.
that it makes people uncomfortable to think, I guess, that these products are touching in and it involves this. But the more we destigmatize that too, right? Like, how many times did you grow up seeing a drawn picture of a guy's body part?
I feel like I definitely saw it more than I saw of a woman's.
Right. I mean, I grew up seeing drawings and guys talking about it all the time. And it's like, there's been this weird hyper focus on men and this weird, like, thing about women, and it's gross. And it's like, you know
Yeah.
what? Neither one are gross. Like, we're just human beings with parts. And like, let's just stop being weird about it. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. And I'm just also thinking about the what you were saying about like if we give out pads and tampons, we might as well give out condoms. Those are
Mhm.
just two completely separate things. And I guess it is because it is part of it's a sexual organ. But
Mhm.
in my head, I'm just like, I don't see how you could even associate the two. Like that's, oh
Girl,
man, I don't
yeah.
even. And if, like you said, though, if we normalize, if the vagina in the sense of, you don't have to like plaster them everywhere, but if we just talk about it almost as if it's just a part of your body, and it's,
Right.
even if we talk about it as if it's sacred or something like that,
Right.
it's the language. Like having this conversation just makes me think it's just the language is like a
Language is
big,
everything. And
yeah,
it's also
yeah,
about speaking up, like, not to, I don't want to dive in another subject, but what I meant by like seeing all these drawings growing up and like boys always, for some reason, being weirdly obsessed with drawing these images in the
yeah,
bathroom stall or whatever. It's more like when you see those things, say, "Hey, you know what? This makes me feel uncomfortable. I don't like seeing this." Like, you know,
yeah,
speaking up when you feel a certain way about the context of what's going on, and the context of periods is completely normal and we should treat it as such. When it
yes,
comes to sex and other things, that's a whole different topic of how we should treat and talk about vaginas. But when we are talking about something that happens at 10, 11, 12 years old, it's a natural part of life, like that should be destigmatized.
yeah,
But yeah, so we give out pads and tampons all over the schools. They were not offered for free in the bathrooms. Girls were required to come and ask. And what we said was like, that's ridiculous. These girls, bless their hearts, you're already making them feel weird by not giving them enough education about this subject. Why do you think that they're actually going to come to you and ask for it? So
right.
we pushed, put the products in the bathroom. Now schools everywhere in the county are starting to leave them in the bathroom. So girls don't have that barrier of like, oh, I have to ask somebody. This is just freely given.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
This is kind of sort of not really a political question.
Sure.
And you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But what do you think about making it free? Like making pads, periods, making pads and tampons. We already
Mm.
get our period for free. um,
Right.
without even really asking for it. What do you think about making like pads and tampons for free? Just in general, like everywhere.
Disagree with that notion, because if we start there, then it's kind of a Pandora's box of like other things that we could
Yeah.
claim that we need, like soap, and we need toothbrushes, we need toothpaste. um, I think that definitely if you are on food stamps, this is where I think that pads and tampons should be free, is if you are on food stamps or some social service. So if you are able to buy food with an EBT card, I believe those things should be included, because if you need help paying for food, you probably also need help paying for, if you've got 2 or 3 daughters and then yourself.
Yeah.
That can get
Oh,
expensive.
that's another point that literally just crossed my mind. Like, people with multiple girls, like,
Right.
just
Yes.
not just thinking about yourself needing it, but people with multiple girls, because you're going to need more than
Right.
one pack a month then. Wow, yeah. And I didn't realize that it wasn't covered. I guess, well, to be honest, I just never really thought about it, that it's not covered. Okay. Yeah, because I go back and forth too on whether it should be free. Because in my head, I'm like, well, it's a beautiful thing that women do and we can't help it. But then, I mean, you're right. Like, it does open the Pandora's box for so many other things that essentially we need as well. But yeah.
Well, you know, this conversation about, you know, multiple girls brings me back to what we do every week. And we deliver pads and tampons to teenagers every Thursday at their home. And it is anonymous.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, we do this because a lot of girls in Appalachia are being raised by grandma because mom and dad are addicted to opioids. That's a legitimate crisis going on in Appalachia, our opioid addiction. And what happens is, like, these kids get put with grandma who's getting SSI, maybe a couple $100 a month, and that's all they have to survive on. So what we do is we bring that to them. They don't, you know, they feel comfortable because it's anonymous. We leave it on their doorstep. We do that every week. And that's, you know, kind of that soft point of, like, also with people that are home insecure, these women really can't help it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no, you know, quote unquote excuse. You know, children, women, young girls, just like they deserve soap, you know, they deserve pads and tampons. So do people in shelters, because we all know that free bleeding is just not fun for anybody unless you have the proper products. Like if you have you know, period panties or the reusable pad, which I use. Now we have menstrual cups. There's a lot of things that you can use that are more long term than pads and tampons, and we also provide those products free at no expense at our office. But when you are somebody that's facing home insecurity and you're in a shelter, I mean, just imagine the blood and trying to contain that period. Like, they deserve, if you're thinking about donating to a shelter, really consider those items too, because it's a health issue if you don't, if you can't clean yourself up.
Yeah. And I just think about how uncomfortable it is sometimes if I don't catch when usually I have an app that tells me, and sometimes I might like ignore it, or sometimes I just don't, or maybe like I get it the day before my app says or something like that. And I just think about how uncomfortable I am when it's like, oh man, I wish I had on a pad right now. I just can't imagine living that way for 7 days out of a month, every month. So I do think it's really important for us to have these conversations. I think it's important for us to see what we can do, especially because, I mean, still to this day, it is the least donated. And I think it's just the least donated because it's the least thought about. Like, when I think of a shelter, I'm thinking of food and clothing, sometimes socks, but like, I'm not really thinking of like something that's basic and something that every woman needs. Every woman.
You know, and the cool thing is, like, so my nonprofit started out as period poverty, and now it's an empowerment center. And it's kind of like this subject of periods can really grow into other conversations about women's issues. You know, it's something so human and biological that I think everybody can get on board with. Doesn't matter your political beliefs or anything. It's kind of that issue that brings everybody in. And then once you get at that table, then you can start opening the conversation up to other things, and it can grow from there. So I think it's awesome that what you guys are doing, because I actually didn't know that there was a statistic about that being the least donated item. So that I'm going to use that for sure. Yeah,
it's the least donated item. And right behind it is socks. But I think that also just kind of shows that it's just overlooked. I mean, when I read that, I just remember thinking, oh yeah, that is something that people will need, because for the most part, we all know where we're going to get it. For the most part, there's you know, there's few people who don't, but for the most part, we all know where we're going to get one. For the most part, or I remember when I was younger, I never even really had to think about it. I would just go to my bathroom. Like, it wasn't even a thought. So I just really hope that everybody listening can think about this, I guess, more, because
I'll tell you a story that I feel like your viewers would really appreciate on this subject. That there is a secret institution that knows about this that others don't, and it's the police. You wouldn't think so, but I have been very supported by police in this country. Yes. Okay. Because, and you wouldn't expect this, right? But
yeah, never crossed my mind.
They know it because they go into people's homes. And one day I was like asking for donations. This was the very first time that I even stood out in my community and asked for help before we got a building or anything. And a cop rolls up, and my immediate thought was like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Like, I'm going to get in trouble. And he was like, what are you up to? Told him I was getting pads and tampons, blah, blah, blah. And he just was like, thank you so much for doing this. And he got really serious. And I was like, well, of course, you're welcome. And he was like, I see this firsthand all the time. And he was like, girls bleeding in their cars. He's like, I've pulled women over that have to shove like napkins in their shorts because I'm getting ready to arrest them and they're not wearing anything. He was like, I've gone into homes where young girls are sleeping in beds where blood spots are all over. On couches. Like, the officers have to see the worst, they're not typically going into homes where everybody's fully like well taken care of. They're hitting the homes that, there's neglect or abuse or things like that, drugs. And he just was like, I see this so much. And I just wish that like I could have some on hand and be like, ma'am, here you go, use this before you have to go in. And it really just, it was eye-opening for me, for sure. That somebody that, a force that I respect so much is on the same page about how this is a real issue and it should be acknowledged. So.
Yeah. Wow. Great story. I really like that. So I wonder if, anyone listening, how beneficial it would be if you were to just take some to your local police station, just give them some to have on hand. Because you're right. Like, a police officer usually isn't going to go to someone's house because they're having a really good day where they're being taken care of and everything's going fine.
Right. They have to see the worst. And we have a great relationship with our sheriff's department. We've donated to the jail. If you're looking for places to donate, some of the places that we hit are like the Boys and Girls Club, the community center, even senior centers, right? That are nonprofits, like panty liners, for older folks. And we hit the schools, we hit any nonprofit really that works with women or children, because you never know if somebody accidentally started. Oh, in churches, by the way. What are you going to do when somebody starts their period in your place and they have nothing? You know, it's good to be able to provide that security. And that is something I'll never forget in graduate school. I was working 3 jobs. I was leaving an abusive marriage, and I was in grad school, and I would start my period every time. I never kept up with it. And that's just how my brain was like jambled. Okay.
Yeah. There's a bajillion other things to worry about.
Exactly. So I'd be sitting in class and I knew, and I was like, oh no. And I would go to the bathroom, and every single time, shout out to App State University in Boone, North Carolina. They always had them available, and it saved me from having to leave, having to, stress, worry, stuff toilet paper. I mean, it was so sweet to have that support. You don't think that seems like a big deal, but man, that was such a big deal for me.
Yeah. I think about a time when, I believe when I was in high school, I was volunteering at a summer camp, and one of the little girls, wasn't there for like 3 or 4 days. And we're like, whoa, where have you been? And she said
Mm-hmm.
that she had started her period, but she lived with her grandma and she didn't have any pads or tampons or anything like that. So her grandma just made her stay home because they didn't have
Right.
anything. And one of the other counselors, she was an older woman, she was like, oh, okay. And then she just went and bought a bunch and just when her grandmother came and picked her up, she just put them in the trunk of her car. And it's just like tiny things like that.
Well, the interesting thing is have you ever thought about how many girls have had to leave school because of that? And,
Yes. Yeah.
and I think true equity is when girls get the same chance as boys.
Yeah.
And we not only donate pads and tampons to schools, but we include wipes and a pair of leggings. I mean, we go as far
I
as,
like that.
yes, girl. And we had the principal of the middle school approach us when we got a small community grant. And she said, since you have donated those things, not one girl's been sent home.
Wow, that's really
Yes.
good.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're making me think of like, well, first of all, Vic was here. She would tell you every time we have someone on that does some community thing, I'm like, okay, so now how do we solve this problem? I'm so easily influenced. But now I'm just trying to think like of some schools here in Charlotte that could definitely use that. The legging thing is and wipes is such a good idea. So there was one time in high school, it was so embarrassing. I definitely had to sit in the nurse and wait for my mom to come because I just was not prepared and it was incredibly obvious. But that would be really good if they had leggings or something. So I didn't miss. I missed like half the day because my mom had to come drive all the way across town, go home, and then come and get me or come and bring what I needed. But wow, that's a very good. Man, that's smart, Olivia.
Well, I mean, girl, like, so I just hit up somebody I knew that sold clothing. Shout out to Megan at Blown Away, Hair and Nails. She gets me leggings wholesale price and she doesn't charge me anything over that.
Nice.
So I'm only paying like $1 for leggings, and $100 for 100 leggings is a lot. It doesn't take a lot to do this, and putting them in a pack with wipes so you can clean yourself up. Another thing that these leggings have saved girls from going home is like holes in their pants or, school dress codes.
Yeah.
If something violates a dress code, I think sometimes we need to be mindful that not every young woman has somebody at home that will wash her clothes or will buy her a new pair of jeans. There are girls that go to school that don't have underwear on or have been wearing the same pair for 3 days. This is real stuff. We taking a micro look at poverty when you're serving your community, you have to do it. And since I've started this nonprofit, wow, I definitely have there's a whole new meaning of life for me of these micro things of cause and effect, and poverty, the effects of it go as far as, a girl having to wear the same bloody panties for a couple of days because mom doesn't have any laundry. They don't have a washing machine. I mean, real stuff like washing machines get broken, water bills get turned off, if mom and dad can't pay them. So what are you supposed to do being a young woman?
Yeah. Wow. And that's such a good point. And once again, like you just don't think of these things. These are just things that and I'm going to say it, in our privileged, at least for myself, a very privileged life, there's never been a time where, I mean, that's not true in college, but that's a whole nother story where I was like, dang, I'm out of underwear. That happened a couple times in college but here's the thing. All I would have to do is just go downstairs and do my laundry. That's it. Like, it's not like I had, something stopping me. It was just me being lazy. But in this privileged life, you just don't think about things as
well. And starting a nonprofit, like, trust me, I was the privileged girl, still am, but I didn't understand things until you get out into your community. For example, it's like I could live in the same bubble for the rest of my life, but because I put myself out there and make myself open to anybody in this community, a judge-free ear, showing empathy, making people feel comfortable. And, that's what we do at our space on the 4 lane. We provide a quote unquote safe space where people can just freely tell us what's going on. So over the last year and a half, Mallory, I feel like I've heard stories that, would probably keep you at night, that kept me up at night, but it's almost kind of normal for me now to see the real effects of poverty and abuse and neglect and all these things that, like, when somebody tells me this is going on, I'm ready to act and it's not shocking anymore.
Yeah.
Just really going out there and listening, uplifting voices. You and I are privileged because we're sitting here on Spotify or wherever you're listening, right? It's reaching out to women and uplifting their voices and giving them a chance to speak about their lived experiences that really it's life changing. And you'll start figuring out what to do for your community the more you listen.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this. Is there anything else you want to share? I can't really think of anything more to ask.
No,
okay. I feel like you did a great job. Yeah.
Thank you.
And honestly, I'm super inspired. Right now our goal is just to do that $250, but I would love to surpass it. And I would love to, right now, we're going to give it to a shelter. But I mean, you just gave me so many ideas for other things that we can be doing for schools, for just different neighborhoods. I'm even thinking of a neighborhood now that like could probably use some help. So I just really appreciate you. And I thank you for all that you are doing in your community and, saying yes to God. Because I know you've changed so many people's lives. So on behalf of them or anyone else, if you don't get thank yous, because I know, thank you. I really appreciate that because I'm sure so many people are grateful for all the work you've done.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And we just want to keep inspiring and planting seeds for this to keep rolling for generations to come.
Yes. And last thing too, I want to say about like what you're doing, like, I hope everyone listening, if you do feel inspired, like this is another reason these conversations are good because we're seeing what Olivia is doing and the impact she's making. She can't be in every single city in the US or even in the world. So like you can start something similar to that in your city. Like you can be Olivia someplace else. And I hope that, listening to this, at least like plants a seed or empowers anyone listening who feels called to do something like this. And I'm sure you wouldn't mind if people reach out to you or anything like that.
Absolutely. Because people have asked me to branch out in other counties and this and that. And my answer is always no. Like, this is my home. And, it's like, take care of your home, take care of your community. Don't worry about the fame of like, expanding and more people knowing you. Like, the most important people that need to know you is your own community. That's worth more than any sort of recognition.
Yes, I love that. And honestly, seriously, the last thing now, but honestly, like we know that what really helps people is the community. And if you focus on your community, your impact can reach so many other people. And that's the reason why you should be doing it more than fame. Like you said, it doesn't matter about the fame. It matters about just helping people. And if you're concerned about, I don't want to stay small, but like you impacting Mary Sue can impact Barbara Ann. I don't know why I'm using those names, but like, names. Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, like you can help. You helping one person can help so many other people. So everyone listening, I really hope you enjoyed this episode. It was a quick one. I mean, I thought it was very informative either way, whether, we don't have to go an hour for it to be informative, but I really hope you guys took something out of it. And if you are interested in doing something, really seriously, reach out to Olivia. Olivia, how can people get connected with you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Facebook, our page, Women of MC. And you can message us, you can text me, you can call me. We have a 24-hour hotline, so we always call and text people back. If you're looking for support on how to get started in your own community, I am happy to share with you the first steps.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, like, subscribe. Also, donate to our feminine products collection. It's on our website, thosearethegirls.com. As soon as you click it, you'll see a donate button, and then right under that is a donate button for the feminine products. Also, too, if you have been inspired or touched by what Olivia said, donate to her as well at her website, womenofmountaincity.com.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a donate link there as well. So do that. It will be very beneficial. As you can hear, she's actually making real change. So, and I'm sure every nonprofit that you'll ever meet, they're going to want some money.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.